Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Bowtie Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to nonprofit fundraising events. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swain.
Hello, and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Woo! We have reached the end of fall fundraising event season, and we are gearing up for event season in spring of 2026. If you have a fundraising event
or year end,
let's not put
a pin in it quite yet. But
that's true. But if you have a fundraising event coming up and you're getting ready for looking at the year ahead, we want to make sure you have Elevate on your calendar. It is March 3rd and 4th. It is a 2-day deep dive fundraising event school for your fundraising event. It is hybrid. You can join us from anywhere. We hope you will register today. Check it out at swamstrategies.com, and you can find a link in our show notes. Today's guest was a speaker at last year's Elevate, and he is the founder of Bowtie Strategies. We are so excited to have Brandon Lenzi joining us today. He has been in fundraising for more than 10 years. I hear that you originally started in banking and finance, which makes so much sense to me, so much sense. His favorite part is not just deploying a plan, but actually implementing that strategy. He is an expert in capital campaigns, which I can testify. He loves to develop the major gift program, plan for large-scale events, secure programmatic and event sponsorships, engage in donor and plan giving. You're like a fundraising dream, friend.
Unicorn.
When you say it all out like that, it really does sound like it.
Unicorn time.
He has run multiple multi-million-dollar capital campaigns. He has converted low-dollar events into million-dollar events. One of Brandon's greatest joys is to invite people in to invest in their community. And today we're so excited to learn from him and to help you all achieve a $1 million event. Brandon, welcome to the show. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, Sam. It's lovely to be here with you both. And I'm excited to get into some of the nitty-gritty of fundraising.
Well, let's talk about these times we're in.
Yes.
So how's fundraising going these days?
You know, it's a challenge, but I think that it's also always been a challenge.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of putting that into perspective. And there's opportunity in some of those challenges as well to deepen relationships with your donors and to really convey the meaning of the impact that your mission is having and an opportunity to strengthen that. There's, like I said, challenges in that and certainly bumps along the road, and people are having to adapt their strategies. But I think that it is going to end up serving the organizations that can make those adaptations better in the long run.
Well, that's what you and I were just talking about, that idea that when things dramatically change and things go away and systems that were broken no longer exist, there's an opportunity for us to rebuild that. I'm seeing that a lot in the nonprofit sector right now. Is there anything that you think is like really changed, or as far as your experience in talking to donors, have you seen a shift at all?
I think that there's a little bit more of a focus on collaboration, both with donors and your kind of larger community that you're serving and the other organizations that are in your ecosystem as nonprofits.
Yep. I love that.
I've got a couple of clients that are really collaborating and actually focusing on Give Guide right now for the Willamette Week is another opportunity for people to come together and really be working out of that kind of culture of abundance rather than scarcity. And I think that that is something that is key to focus on right now rather than being beaten down by everything that we're seeing as far as what's being removed or taken away or destroyed.
I would like to put a big exclamation point on that.
And I so appreciate that every time I talk to you. You're not ignoring what's happening, and yet you're building a bigger frame for people to continue to see what's just out here and what's just out here and what's actually happening. The question I want to ask you feels tricky, but it's actually not, because I think you have a great perspective on this. From your perspective, what actually is fundraising?
That's good. I like it. Meta. What is fundraising? I think for me, and this is what I ground myself in, especially when things get tricky or I'm starting to get a little squirrely about, should I make this ask? Should I, what's going on? Fundraising is an opportunity for individuals or organizations, but I primarily work with the individuals to realize the potential and the vision for the community that they want to live in. It's an opportunity for them to live out their values, to support something that's meaningful for them to be the hero of that story, and also have an impact that's greater than something that they could do individually when all of that fundraising comes together at an organization.
I love that because I think that captures what is at the heart, the truly aspirational nature of what we're all trying to do, which is build that world, right?
Yeah.
And I think often fundraising becomes the task, the drudge, the chore, the title, whatever that is. And I think people kind of rail against that instead of pulling further back to see it as an opportunity. So I so appreciate your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's interesting when people ask me what I do or I'm talking with friends, it's like, oh, you're a fundraiser. People must run and hide when
Right.
you call or anything. And I'm like, well, I think that it's really providing an opportunity for joy and those people to be able to be excited and feel that they accomplished something, especially in a time where it feels like we're not able to move the needle a little bit. This is an opportunity to really have that impact.
Okay, let's talk about joy then. So the shift that we have seen in fundraisers who embrace joy is astronomical. Like finding the joy in fundraising. We actually had a guest on the show previously in which she talked a lot about a donor challenging her to find the joy in fundraising. And she said she spent about a year asking herself that every time she was in an engagement, interaction, and realized that she was finding the joy in fundraising. And I think that giving feels good. As a donor, I get joy. I was working with a group yesterday in a workshop scenario of fundraisers in which we were talking about, think about the last gift you made. And once you have that gift and you think about the organization you're giving to, I asked, did it feel good? And all 21 people said yes. I said, did it not feel good to anyone? And all 21 people said no. And I do think the act of giving kind of gives us that like dopamine hit. It gives us that like joy boost where we feel like it's a way for us to take some control over the world we want to see. But I find you're unique in that you find a lot of joy in fundraising, but also your donors are very joyful collaborating with you. So what's your secret to finding the joy in fundraising?
Well, I mean, you know, it's funny to continue on that. What is fundraising? I think it's about people and it's about the relationship with people. And so the joy that I find personally in fundraising is being able to, as I said, invite somebody into something that they can be excited about and really connect with their why and what their goals are for their giving, and then be able to showcase that they are achieving those goals and reinforce the relationship, to learn about them and their motivations and their lives as individuals and people, and then see how we can come together on the same side of the table. It's never a negotiation in fundraising where I'm trying to get something from you, but how can we sit on the same side of the table and look at this problem that we're trying to solve together and be part of the solution?
Dreamy. I want to ask you practically how that works for you, because let's say, for example, you're sitting across from a donor, we'll call her Jenny, and you're talking to her about the new program that you're really excited about. And she starts to talk to you about a program she was involved 10 years ago. How does that change that conversation, that like becoming on the same side of the table, whether it's that she moves or you move? Like, what does that look like for you practically in that moment?
I think that I was just talking about this too. There's always a lot of ideas. So in this situation where Jenny's talking about something that she was doing 10 years ago, I think some people can have the response of like, okay, well, that's not the thing we're doing today. And I'm trying to do this specific thing. And everyone's always going to have an idea that's going to distract or create more work for me. But actually listening to what Jenny's experience was, what resonated with that program about it, with her, and why she was involved, why she's proud to be bringing it up in this conversation now, is going to provide learning opportunities not only about Jenny, and you don't necessarily have to do everything Jenny is suggesting to do either.
Right.
There's gracious and graceful ways to do that, but hearing her, being in that moment and listening with her invites her to become a stakeholder in the program that we're trying to create. And her feeling that she was heard and that some of her ideas, whether they're implemented or not, are now known to the organization, that she was important to the organization in some way, more than just what her financial contribution is, but as a person, I think is how you can invite that in. And you just there's never the rush to, if you're rushing to get to a gift, then you're missing the whole point of the relationship, which
Yes.
is centering around the person and understanding when they're going to be ready to make that and their why behind why they're saying yes.
I love that. And I think with that, I just had a light bulb myself. And I think that is probably the primary difference for me in a donor, as a donor, and in that experience, and the zeros that add or the longevity of my relationship that adds is just that simple act of being heard.
I agree. I immediately started thinking about organizations we've donated to where the gift was was seen as a conversation, and then that conversation continued and our giving continued in bigger ways. Oftentimes we'd come in with expertise, let me tell you, and it wasn't necessarily that was being adopted, but simply that we were being heard. So I have like double exclamation points on that one.
Yeah. I think too the very humanness of it, it's almost like the I think people get caught up in the transaction. And so centering the humanness helps create that lean in. People know when they feel like a checkbook.
Yeah, people give to people though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
And it can be hard to lose yourself in that process too, because as fundraisers, we have goals. We know that we're having this conversation.
Totally.
You've set it up with your donor that I want to ask you for support today. And I like to play a game, especially when I'm working with volunteers or other board members to help fundraise, of like, let's go into this meeting and let's spend as long as possible not talking about the gift. Like, let's just chat. Let's hear about the grandkids. Let's hear about them going back to school. Let's hear about how work is going for this person, the trip that they just took. Let's do all of this so that at the end, when it can be either they'll prompt you, the donor will actually get to a point of like, but that's not why we're here today. And then you can move into it, or you get to, and sometimes it's not right time. You hear in that conversation where you went in planning to make an ask that, oh, I have these medical things, or this thing is happening right now, or I just lost a parent or a family member. And you decide, okay, now's not the time for me to make this ask. You're not in a place to hear this. I'm in a place where I'm just going to hear you. We're going to be together. And then when we come back and the time is right, it's just going to make that relationship something that is full of trust that you can then lean on and is going to lead to a larger investment.
They remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They absolutely remember
You're
that.
creating friendships with your donors.
Yeah.
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 I think we forget that piece sometimes. Like, no, we're all in this work together, and that changes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're experiencing some erosion of institutional giving,
Just a little.
grant funding. I mean,
a little.
there's some of those exterior pieces that are actually happening. But back to sort of that original idea of opportunity. What opportunity do you think this presents, and how should organizations be listening?
That's a great question. Well, I really enjoy the relationship, as we've been discussing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my work does focus around individual giving and building relationships with those people. It's the largest part of philanthropy in the United States. I think it's something like 73% of philanthropy in the U.S. comes from individuals. And so in difficult times like this, being able to rely on those individuals is the best way to withstand the ups and downs that we're experiencing right now. And I think that it also emphasizes that if you haven't been focusing on your individuals, if it feels easier to do a corporate sponsorship or submit a grant that is a little bit less about relationships sometimes, or can be, that now is really the time to start focusing on those people who maybe are in your backyard wanting to support you, signaling that they want to support you instead of kind of walking out into the neighborhood to try and find people. And I think those are the donors that are going to be able to support you, especially when they're now seeking, as I am, and I suspect you two are as well, where can my gift have an impact against this thing that I feel is out of my control?
Yeah.
Back into that control element that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And within that, the relationships with individuals at those institutions is also what's going to be able to continue that
that's
fundraising
exactly
with
right.
them. If you're just submitting a grant application or talking to that corporation once a year when you have a sponsorship for an event and you're asking them to do it, but not staying in touch and cultivating and bringing them into events or seeing the impact or inviting them to volunteer and be participating on a board or a committee, then when things get tough, that's immediately going to slip away. So even when we're talking about institutions, the person is what is at the end of the the pot at the end of the rainbow. The rainbow's
Yeah.
the person.
So I want to tap into something. I have a couple of follow-up questions on that.
I do too.
We'll arm wrestle for it.
No,
We've
go.
got all day.
So the first thing that struck me is that you identified the sort of importance of the invitation in, the like continuing to invite for board leadership, volunteer opportunities, attending events. And that's an element of the puzzle that we've been really leaning into too, because I think part of what is happening right now and part of the divide we're seeing on a global scale is the otherization of us, them, whatever us is and whatever them is, that there's so much research behind people make decisions about how they give, what they participate in, how they vote, what they're engaged in based on who they know and the relationships that they're in, who they trust, whose eyes they see, who they can connect to. And we see this sort of greater doubling impact that happens when people are actually in room together, in space together, in community together, that is beyond just, maybe the goal of that event. It might be beyond just here's an invitation to come volunteer or here's an invitation to attend our fundraising event, but they leave with a network of each other. They leave with this sort of shared storytelling that they can provide. So I love that you touched on that. I didn't want it to sort of like whiz on by because I think one of the biggest shifts we've seen is that when organizations are really actively, one, not saying we're going to pause and see what, we're going to watch the world shift and shuffle and wait and see what
Without
happens.
us.
Right?
We're going to watch it do it without us.
Those organizations are fairly quick to fold. But the organizations that say we're going to keep on, but we're going to keep figuring out ways to invite people in are coming back and reporting to us that there's enough, meaning that there are other resources from other places that can fill those gaps. But my question in how you talk to donors is, do you tell them about those gaps? Are you currently talking to donors about a grant that went away? And like, what is that like, how are donors receiving that? Are they interested in that?
Yes. And I don't, not only do I talk about the funding gaps, but I talk about that inviting people in very specifically as like, I am truly joyful and grateful to have you here to have this conversation today. And this work that we're doing is how I feel I am resisting the division that is happening around the world right now. That this work to me is my active resistance in gathering people around. I primarily work in arts and cultures organizations right now with my clients. And so gathering people around theater or creativity or preserving heritage and legacy storytelling is how I think that we can erode these divisions and break down those walls to gather, to exchange stories, talk about what makes us human, and the ideas about what a future might look like together. And so that, and coupling with, yes, we have experienced this loss in funding very specifically because of these XYZ reasons from this organization and this amount, this funding would have typically allowed for us to do this with our mission and with our community. And we don't have another opportunity right now to fill that gap. The funding that we're getting from institutions that is still happening is already going to other places. And so this is a gap that means we're not going to be able to accomplish X if we don't get that funds. And so would you be willing to double your gift, to give a gift of X today in order to help cover that gap so that we can continue operating and implementing our mission boldly rather than having to face a contraction because of this change?
I immediately start thinking about sitting across the table from you as a donor. And I'm immediately thinking, I would want to know those things about my organizations. I would want to know that they're strong and stable and moving forward with a plan, even though there's a gap, they have identified that gap. Like, those are all things that I think of as a donor that I'm like, I'm glad that you bring those to the table.
Well, and what's really great about you naming that you're doing this work, this is your work and your resistance and what that is, what that does for me as a donor is shifts me into a place to see my donation as an act of resistance, not just that the organization I'm supporting is doing the resisting. Does that make sense? It sort of galvanizes me, and very quickly, we often talk about, the mission of the organization and the mission of the donor and finding that alignment. this becomes very active that way, and that people can start to see, we talk about voting with our dollars all the time, and often that gets boilerplated down into don't shop here, don't buy this.
Right.
But what do you do? And what you can do and what you can make happen as a donor, there's power in that. And I think there's just power on that that's getting left on the table by organizations by not galvanizing their donors in that way, because then you can call them later when it gets really crunchy too.
Yeah.
And you're like,
You're
that
our
moment
team
we were
member.
talking about, we're fighting, and we want to give you the opportunity to fight with us.
Yeah.
And what can that look like?
We're part of the solution. We're on the same side of the
Yep.
table. We're
That's
on the
right.
team. It's not you're in it with us.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to be in it more, here's these opportunities to engage beyond your treasure. Here's the time and the talent that the organization
Yeah.
could use as well.
I think that's great. The other thing I don't want to whiz by that you mentioned a few minutes ago,
these
that
brilliant pieces
I
you got
think would be
full.
really helpful for folks is you said when donors signal, and I think donors signal a lot, and I think donors actually signal with donations as well. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of donor signaling? Because I think sometimes they're like, well, they didn't say yes, or they didn't fill out that form, or I didn't get this, or they gave us, but I think there's a wide range of what people do to see if you're listening.
Yeah, and I, as a donor, also do this.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
I'm going to make a smaller gift of $250, $50, whatever the scale is for that organization, and then see how I'm responded to, see if I'm going to get that call. I hope that my alma mater is not listening right now, but when they called me or had a student call, I would always, hear out what that student's story was going to be. As a fundraiser, I'm always going to listen to another fundraiser's pitch because I get it, and it's hard to have someone not listen. So whether I'm going to give or not, and I usually would always make a gift, and now I'm not getting those phone calls anymore. I'm getting letters, and I don't feel as connected with the university, what's happening on campus, and I'm not making a gift there. So don't call me, but no, there. So I think that that is one way of signaling of, or increasing a gift, or choosing to make a recurring gift that maybe is at a lower amount is also a signal. And if you're in person, then there's a lot of different body languages. There's a lot of questions that can come up of just inquiring more about the organization, or wanting to know, how did that one program go? What was the success of that event? Hopefully you're reporting that back to your donors as it happens, as a good stewardship and cultivation effort. But if they're inquiring about that, or getting into those deeper questions, if someone starts to say, well, how does this work in the budget kind of thing, then I know that they're seriously thinking about their gift, and they're seriously thinking about a gift that's going to impact that budget in a different way than what we might have started to talk about. And so there's a lot of different answers to that question. And I think it's something that as a fundraiser you can get to know as you go, but really is focused on knowing the person who you're interacting with.
Yeah.
And being able to not spending time with people who aren't engaging in that way when there's other people who are eager to and willing to. And it might feel like, I don't have the time to send that quick thank you note, or it always falls down to the bottom of the list or whatever. And that is the thing that is going to, what the donor is going to remember from the interaction, that they were seen, and that they feel that they had an impact and are part of that team.
Yeah. They're not asking questions just to ask questions.
Yeah.
No, but
They're telling you what they want to know.
Since we're talking about signaling, though, I want to flag something we were talking about before we started recording, which is there's a bunch of new tools out there in the world that are being created. A lot of AI being created for fundraisers, a lot of new software tools and technology tools. And there's a technology tool that we've been partnering with our sponsor of the podcast, Feather. And it's a marketing tool you can utilize for your digital marketing ads, but also for your emails. And so if you've been using Constant Contact or Mad Mimi or any of the other kind of like email tools out there, you can move your emails into Feather, and you can see all of the activity that is engaged with. And so all of a sudden, those signals are being segmented and creating for you clarity about your donor base just based on the activity of how they interact with you. You can see those that open and close and delete. You can see those that delete, but you can also see like those who click through everything you send or who went to the donate button but didn't execute the donation. So there's a lot of tools that can help you to think about what are those signals. I mean, you're talking about the most important, just sitting in conversation with the donor. But I also think that, are they following you on social media? Are they liking your social media? Are they,
Because
coming
the
and
donor
volunteering?
thinks you're hearing those too.
Well, and I was going to
That's
say,
critical.
talking about the person that's across from you is important, and everything that you're bringing up, your data is so important as well. And I see this with a lot of people or who have teams that are stretched thin, and it's coming in and saying, no, this data, which feels like a secondary thing often for organizations, is so crucial to be able to pull this report, to calculate an RFM score, to look at what the interaction has been, what was happening at the organization when these gifts were made, what is resonating with them. Is it a particular program? That is so important to be on top of and understand and be able to recognize what your key metrics as an organization that I think are defined internally of these are the places, because there's so much data. It's very hard to keep up with all of it. I'm not saying
so
you have
much,
to constantly be doing it, because then you're in front of a screen and you're losing that actual human interaction, which is at the end of the day most important. But the data is, I think, a huge part of signaling that's not happening when you're in the room together.
Agreed.
Well, I want to ask you a question about fractional fundraising and the work that you're doing. So fractional fundraising, going in and supporting an organization where they have a missing component of their fundraising team. You are within organizations jumping in to help with capital campaigns, with major donor planning, with strategic asks. And in that, I think that oftentimes there's that sort of dream that we hear from a committee or board that's like, we just need to secure that one gift that's $1 million gift. But that might not be a scale that's appropriate, because the number of times that I've heard people say, can we just call Oprah? My question always is, but do you know Oprah?
Does Oprah care about you?
Right. The question I have for you is kind of, how do you assess what is a right size gift for an organization, and kind of how to set those expectations around, like, maybe the 7-figure gift is not the thing we should be going after right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of different variables, I would say, and I think some of it is by gut as well. There's a little bit of science there, and also just kind of experimentation and an art form to it. But yeah, there's constantly if we just get that one gift, or if this one donor makes this gift, and everybody is using that as a distraction and as an excuse. And it's easy to talk about this one person who's very unlikely to make this gift, rather than having the 10 conversations with the people who are there on your bench and have shown that they're interested, have an affinity for the organization. And with the right cultivation might give a larger gift. And so, thinking about there's a kind of major giving, and how an organization defines that is typically based on the organization's budget size. Some organizations would say that their leadership giving starts at $1,000. For some, it's $5,000. For some, it's higher. So finding what that mark is of where, based on your giving trends, donors are moving up the needle. And I think that typically we've seen the 80-20 rule, which is that 20% of your donors are going to give 80% of your contributed revenue. And I think that that's actually changing more into more of a 90-10 these days.
I
that's
agree.
what it feels like.
And so that's one way of looking at it. Like, who are those top 10% of the donors that are making those large gifts? That's probably your leadership giving. And then what's the next tier down from that? Who is that 80-20 switching to 90-10 of that 10% difference? Who are those people that are maybe on the cusp of moving into that new range? And spending the time and acknowledging that it takes time to build those relationships to get to that gift. And it might be that one of those people is going to be your 7-figure donor. It might be that they're maybe not in the right place to make that gift today, but that ignoring them is going to cost it to you in the future. Oh, my kids have just gone off to college. I've got 4 years where I'm paying crazy amounts of money to cover this schooling, and then I don't have that in 5 years. And on that year, I am interested in increasing my gift because this is what's important to me. And I've now gotten the kids out of the nest, and I'm kind of in this life phase where I'm switching, and that's something that you get to know with your donors, and you build that trust and rapport so that when the time is right, they might be interested in doing that. Or it could be that it's a legacy gift and that there's somebody who is retired and living on this and wants to be sure that they're covering their medical expenses and any possible things, and understanding that that gift that they're making today is very generous and that there could be a much larger gift down the line.
I love the stories that we hear of the unexpected librarian who leaves their estate to an organization and it turns out it's, $1.8 million, something like that. And so often that is the $10 a month donor. It's the volunteer who comes in every Sunday. It's the, I attend every event and work the registration table volunteer who knows your mission deeply. And I think ultimately what you're talking about is it's a matter of ROI, like where you spend your time for return on investment. If you're spending your time with the people who already have indicated and signaled to you their investment, their interest, you can move and grow that over time versus chasing the, elusive $1 million donor that may or may not be out there for you.
And even if they give that gift, it might be a one-time gift and not happen
That's right.
for a lifetime giving that's going to be much higher. There's a metaphor that I use or an analogy with my clients to understand the process of time and consistency that is required in fundraising, and that fundraising is not a water pump. It's not a one-to-one direct action if I pump and then I get this gift out.
Right.
But it's actually more like a flywheel in that you have to put effort into spinning this wheel and the water's going to start slowly trickling out, and then it's going to come in more and stronger until eventually, if you have dedicated the time and systems and consistency to that fundraising practice, the wheel will be driving itself. And it does take a much larger front load of work to actually set that up, to start the practice of engaging with donors. And then as you cultivate them and relationships get stronger, they'll start engaging with you without you having to necessarily take that step or chase them down with the 7 emails to try and get a meeting. They'll eagerly respond with joy to be a part of your team.
It's a great analogy.
Which also encapsulates to me that idea for organizations who are like, yeah, we haven't done a really good job cultivating in the last few years. And then they're up against it and they expect those donors to show up today in exactly the same way they were doing. It's like, no, again, not the water pump. You've got to spend some time on the flywheel. And I think that duration for folks, it's just a stream that's constantly going. Where are you in it? And you have to be in it doing constantly. When we think about donors, are all donors the right donors?
No.
Talk to us about that, please. Because I do think a lot of folks get into a space where they're just like, well, it's a donor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this is, again, about that, like who you're spending time with and to the ROI that we're talking about. Because if you have somebody who is going to make a one-time gift and it's probably a shiny, sparkly, large gift that you really need and it's going to really make an impact this year and you want to chase it, but there's going to be strings attached and they want it to go to this thing or they want it to be around this event, and this event they're not going to invite their friends to unless it's super cool and world class, and so you have to spend an extra however many thousands of dollars
their entire donation
in order to set up
to throw
cool
them a party
for them so that they can invite their friends and be like, look at my cool party that I did for this and I'm so cool. And that's not necessarily somebody who's going to then next year when you're like, great, so we raised X amount last year at the event, spent a lot more, and now we're trying to do it, and they're like, no, I'm done. That was like the one thing. So that's not somebody. You want a donor who is showing affinity for your mission, who is showing up, and who has donor loyalty. Loyalty is a huge part of that as well. And it's not like unfailing loyalty for an organization because you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be relationship bumps with that donor as well, but that is genuinely connected to your mission. As a fractional fundraiser and working with multiple clients, I'm sometimes asked, well, how are you going to get a gift from this one person? Or you're just going to like take our clients to a different organization. If somebody is giving you a gift because Brandon Lenzi is working at your organization, that's not a gift that you want.
Right, because then
That's exactly
they're your
right.
donor.
I'm not doing my job unless I am facilitating a connection between the donor and your mission.
That's right.
And there's part of that relationship where I'm in there and I hopefully have a connection with them as well so that I can do my job better. But it's about connecting them with the mission so that it's not when I leave an organization or you as an executive director leave an organization, suddenly this donor has been there for 10 years, stops giving. They should have the connection with the mission, and there should be a nice handoff of that relationship as well so that the donor continues to feel connected to your organization and the work that you're doing long after we've gone.
When you step out, Brandon, someone else has to step in.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that person's just going to say, oh, I don't feel like I have a connection there anymore. I don't know who to call. I don't know who to email to get this thing. And that makes me, as somebody who's made a gift regularly over 5, 10, 15 years, feel really out in the cold and disconnected and not valued as a donor to the organization because suddenly I've lost my person. And so there's a balance there because it is about one-on-one relationships. People give to people, but it should be because of the impact that they're having and not because they just want to put a smile on my face.
I want to talk about the new, I know we're getting ready to go to break, but I want to talk about the new development role, meaning someone who just comes into a development director position and is in that seat of donors have expectations and I don't know any of them. I think that is the single most powerful moment you have as a fundraiser because you get to use the I'm new and I've been told that you are someone I need to talk to. I've been told that you have a rich history with this organization. Tell me your story. Why do you give? That moment, I think, is the moment that oftentimes you can seal a new relationship, you can cement a new gift, you can create a reinvestment, you can create a moment of like trust and thank you for reaching out to me and that sense of belonging and being a part of an organization for a donor. So whenever I'm working with someone who's a new development director, I'm like, very quickly over the next 90 days, you should have a list of who are the 2 people every single day that you're talking to so that you have 180 new contacts you've made in those first 90 days that are maybe reinvesting people, re-engaging people. But if you ask a board, a former development member, an executive director, who are the top people I need to talk to, they can put that list together and very quickly they can become your new best friends.
Yep.
I love like that new moment opportunity you have, I think is always a game changer.
And back to that, like, tell me about what some of the challenges you see with the organizations are. And bringing them into a stakeholder to be a part of the solution. You're on the same side of the table. You're hearing their opinion, their ideas, and you're making them feel seen.
Yeah, agree.
Totally.
Well, let's take a moment. We're going to take a break to hear from one of our partners. But when we come back, I want to talk about fundraising events with you. So
Love it.
We'll be right back.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the fundraising elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your programming and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at swamstrategies.com. You can also find the link in our show notes.
Welcome back. We are here with Brandon Lenzi, who is such a savvy fundraiser.
Yes.
And I know that gets bandied about a bunch. But I love how immersed in relationship you are and that comes to bear on outcomes. And I think people sometimes forget that those are inextricably linked.
Yes.
Let's dive into the big ask, shall we? We were talking about, prior to the break, we were talking about the shiny penny of $1 million ask.
Yes.
So big ask is relative to you for your organization.
Yeah.
When we say big ask, it's something that many nonprofits dream about and many fundraisers fear.
I've never done.
They've never done.
Yeah.
They fear. There's a lot of pressure on them in that moment, usually from inside their organization to go do, when you get shoved into a room, go talk to them. Can you provide a tactical example of what is possible when making big asks? Of course, relative to the skill we're talking about.
Yeah, well, when you're talking about a major gift or transformational gift, then there's a lot that's possible there. And there's a lot of tools that you can use as part of that ask too, of talking about what the impact of this gift is going to have, what new program it might create, what it's going to do for the growth of other programs that are already in place. And it really is, it's funny that I kind of fell into the major gifts work through my capital campaign with literary arts, and going from asking for, and what the whole team really was going from asking for major gifts of up to $100,000 was kind of really significant. Sometimes there was a couple 250s, but when you move into a capital campaign, you start talking on a much different scale.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the conversation is the same, and the number doesn't really matter. It's just the number that you're talking about based on who you're talking about it with. It's a deeper investment in the organization, but the reason that the donor is making that investment, the relationship that you're building with the donor, is all the same thing.
Yep.
And getting to that scary moment of, am I asking for 5,000 or am I asking for 500,000? There's not really a big difference to it. And I think that until people start doing that and understanding it, it does feel scary. And I think that goes to your relationship with money that you're bringing into the conversation as well. But you're, again, just creating an opportunity for joy, and for that donor to have an impact in their community through a larger transformational investment.
It's interesting.
I love that.
You just mentioned kind of the relationship to money you have and what you bring into the conversation. And we find so often that the best fundraisers we work with are folks who have their own very healthy relationship to money. They've done some work to understand their relationship to money. I often hear in the hiring side of development professionals, folks ask that question of, what is your experience with the $1 million ask, or with the big ask, or the once in a lifetime transformational ask? And that will become a dividing line of whether or not someone gets hired. And yet
it's not the right question.
I think what you just said is the right question, right? What's your relationship to money? Because I think if you have a healthy relationship to understanding, it's not just about the money, but it's about what you can make possible together, that is a total game changer. So if someone feels comfortable bringing people into, let's talk about stories of our mission and impact and the world we want to create together, I think that is a better hire than someone who may or may not have checked that box of multi-gifts at $1 million.
Yeah, just because I asked for it one time and I'm telling you, yes, I successfully got this gift, or I didn't get this, but I've asked for these things kind of thing, doesn't mean that for the 3 weeks leading up to that, I didn't avoid every possible step of making that ask versus focusing on the joy that you're bringing into the conversation with it. And I think to that point too of what the gift is going to be able to achieve, we were talking about budget gaps in institutional funding. To be able to speak to that opens the door for that larger ask. The why. I'm not just doing it because I think you have a deep checkbook and I want to get that for our organization, but I'm asking you because I'm in a moment of transformation that I'd like you to be a part of, that we can be part of together.
Yep.
I just want to write down everything you're saying
So
and
good.
hand it to people.
I think it's being recorded, actually.
Yeah, it is.
This is the good news. You're welcome.
So you and I worked on an event project together. And so I want to talk a little bit about that story, because that event was an event where you had just completed some capital campaign work. Mm-hmm. You had been working with some donors on making once in a lifetime big transformational asks. And one of those donors said, how do we transform this event from $500,000 to $1 million event? So collectively, you and I developed a strategy. That strategy would include something I call an anchor gift. Mm-hmm. So an anchor gift is a single large gift that we're then going out to match multiple times, a couple of times before the event in pre-committed gifts that donors pledge before the event happens, but then also a couple of times during the event, so that it's not simply that we want to match your gift 1-to-1, but we want you to match that gift. We want you to match that gift. We want you to match that gift. Yeah. Or we want both of you together to match that gift, so that we're able to really exponentially take a single donor's generosity and transform it into something much bigger. And to me, that's like collective action. That's a sense of community all working together. It's a sense of belonging to something bigger. It's making your money go further. I'm curious if you can talk about, we developed the strategy together, but you did the asks. You went out and had to explain to people and talk to people about this strategy. And I'm curious if you can talk about what was the donor experience like when you would walk through this strategy with them, and kind of how did you make those asks?
Yeah, well, first, mad props to you for the anchor gift strategy. I think that was like crucial in getting the event to increase to meet those goals, and it wouldn't have happened without that collaboration. So I really appreciate that. And that sense of community that you were talking about, I think, is one of the key parts of that conversation with donors. As a major donor, they want to not feel like they're the only one that you're coming to fund the organization. So when you go to that person and ask for an anchor gift, in this case it was $100,000, you're going to let them know, we see you, we appreciate your investment, and we're going to ask other people to match you. We're going to increase people's giving so that they raise up and are part of this community that's having this collective action. And so we took that $100,000 and then went out and asked for 2 gifts at $50,000. And we were able to secure those as pre-commitments. And then we took it, again, to your point of matching it multiple times. It doesn't just have to stop and say, okay, we've got that in the room, we can stop there. But we actually built the entire paddle raise strategy around that anchor gift. So that the whole evening was about, we're matching it. Now we've doubled it. Now we've tripled it. Now it's 4 times this gift is having this 4 times impact and has invited 4 times the amount of people into that collective action. So we matched it twice at $50,000. We had 4 $25,000 gifts as we went into the event. And then we went down to $10,000 from there. And I think we had 7 or 8 confirmed kind of going into the event.
Yeah.
And that, because you've now had the $100,000 and then in the room for the person who's just a guest, oh my gosh, we've met the match. Oh my gosh, they just matched it again. Oh my gosh, we're so close to matching it again. Like, this is insane. I want to be a part of this. That momentum that's created and seeing the other people that you're in the room with that are supporting it and that you're part of this community. I think nonprofits love to talk about their community. We like to talk about the larger community as well, but actually having that embodiment of it in the room where it's palpable, where you can actually visibly see it. I can reach out and touch my community. I think takes that really kind of ambiguous term sometimes that makes it feel like it's easy to fracture, to get into some of the challenges we're facing, and actually put it in front of you and say, no, we are gathering. This is a form of resistance that we're all a part of in making a different, better future for whatever this mission is that we're looking to support. And so, and then taking it down and trying to do it at 5 as well, if you can, and find other ways to continue that match and continue that energy in the room.
Even as you talk about it, I feel like the chills go down my spine, because I remember sitting in the room knowing you had some pre-commits, but you sit there knowing that they've told you yes, knowing that they've pledged.
Don't forget to raise your paddle. Don't forget to raise your
Knowing they
paddle.
could change their mind. And so you have that moment where you just, are excited. You've set it up. You know how this is all going to unfold. And then you hope it unfolds, right? So we watched, and the auctioneer opened with that strategy and explained what we were working toward. So all of a sudden we have this like bigger collective goal we were working toward. And when that first match hit, it was like, yes. And then the second, you're like, yes. I knew we had those, and yet still I was excited.
Like, we won.
But we didn't know if we had the third one. So in this, just to think through this, we were trying to match 10 gifts at $10,000 to match $100,000. You had 7 or 8 of those lined up, but that means on impulse, we were trying to get someone in the moment to say, yeah, 10,000, I'm in. Those happened in the room. Those gifts showed up. What did that feel like to you when the first unknown gift appeared in the room?
Well, I know I'm preaching to the choir about the intensity and adrenaline rush that happens at an event. And so I think that in fundraising, there is a bottomless pit of need. You're always going to be fundraising. And I think that's a challenge for some people too, is like, we met our goal, we did this thing. And then it's like, okay, and now we have to do that again next. And here's this next thing.
Yes.
But that moment is one of not only the relationships with people, but that success and seeing those relationships all come together and be relating to one another outside of me through this strategy that we put together that is great and was able to be used in some pre-commitment conversations, but see it come together and see that power of community and the goal of a mutual impact, I think, is one of the things that keeps me going as a fundraiser in some difficult times. And it's so joyful, and it's so, I think I even got up and then went and thanked those people as it's happening. Like, you don't have to wait to say thank you, to go and like, that's amazing, thank you so much for doing that. And it's really affirming that people care and they see what they can do together.
Well, I know for me, sitting in that room, even though I had been working on the campaign, I was working on the event, you and I had been developing it together, I felt invited in to participate in it because the match kept, the invite to be a part of the match kept happening. So it wasn't like, oh, I can't do that because I'm not a $50,000 donor. I was invited to be a part of it. And that $1 million hit felt as successful to me with my $1,000 gift as it probably did to our $100,000 anchor gift.
Yeah.
And I know the room was buzzing that night. Like, when we hit it, people were buzzing. And it wasn't that fancy party that the $1 million donor demands. It was based in story. It was really incredible, compelling speakers about the mission. It was a vision for what was possible together. And it was a really good strategy with really good conversations and relationships already developed. And to the point where you even, I learned a lot from you in that event, because you also thought about, you had table hosts that had openings at their tables, like they had bought a table and they only had 8 guests coming. And you thought very strategically about who's not in the room that I want to make sure gets an invitation. And then you asked that table host to host that donor. So you weren't simply saying, we're going to put a volunteer there or a staff member there. You were like matchmaking. And so you brought a whole host of new donors in that maybe would not have been at the event otherwise. It was a beautiful thing to see, but it was a lot of sort of pre-conversation and relationship building that made it possible.
And I think that the invitation to that larger community, kind of outside of what the typical guest list might have looked at, is so important as far as recognizing that your $1,000 gift is just as meaningful as the $100,000 gift.
Yes.
And that the different ways in which you support and show up for this organization, the time, talent, and treasure, bringing in people who give in other ways than treasure to tell why and have those conversations at that table that you don't even have to prime.
Right. Yeah.
They're like, I'm so excited to be at this event. I love this organization. I want to do this. And this is how I engage. And here's my story. And that exchanging of it creates community and sees it. And I think that that's why, like, having those community moments, not just going into a dinner or going into, even if they're impactful storytelling moments, the ability to actually have conversations with the people that are at my table, with other people at other tables in a pre-cocktail hour, can sometimes feel like this is just where I'm like getting the holding pen before I move everybody up. But it's actually so crucial to setting the tone for the event. It is. And like getting into that, oh, this is my community. This is here. We're all here because we want to do something tonight. And like, how can I be a part of that? And what I came in thinking that I might do as a gift or however else might change through that, and seeing how other people are showing up and what's the most uncomfortable number that I can think of tonight that is still going to be able to have some impact.
I want to go back to the anchor.
Yeah.
Because there's an interesting two-way street there in terms of, you come to me, we have this conversation, I give you the $100,000, and then I'm kind of sitting there going, okay, interesting, right? Opportunity. And I want to get into what that conversation is when you see that donor and come to them with the strategy that shows that you heard them, went and thought about the opportunity to make that transformational gift that much more transformational, and that they actively are at the heart of that transformation happening with the gift. And it shows you're taking their donation seriously. It shows you're taking the campaign seriously, and that you are looking for opportunities to continue to make good on this mission. And I mean, that's that 5-fold rate of return on that anchor gift. if I leave that $100,000 sitting in whatever high yield account it's in, I can't touch that as a donor. And so that conversation, what is that like for that donor when they see you laying those pieces out for them and they really understand, I thought I was having this impact and you're presenting me, if you can't
Much
see me,
bigger.
my hands are getting much bigger, this kind of impact.
Yeah. Well, and it's that 5 times return on not only the financial impact, but the deepening of that relationship with that donor and the joy that they're experiencing from it. And so I think when you go into those conversations, you're approaching a donor in a very strategic way, in a very transparent way, which is key. And you're never going to be able to, people always ask, oh, it's iffy to ask somebody for this. I'm never going to twist somebody's arm into making a gift. And so laying that out in a way that is respectful and shows this is where you're stepping in as a leader for our community. Thank you for being that hero. And here's how you're creating other people to have that opportunity to be a hero. And in this particular instance, it was great that that donor was willing to, and as we kind of went through the process, became more empowered to advocate for it themselves.
Yeah.
They were actively fundraising. They were actively proud of the gift that they were making. They were talking to those people who were matching before and during and after the confirmation of that. There was some instances where we had them in the room saying, I'm doing this, and as a peer-to-peer, I would like you to meet me where I am so that we can do this together. And then the stories that they tell after that, and then also the likelihood that they're willing to repeat it for your next event is crucial as well, because they were involved in the process. They saw they had the impact as a stakeholder and as part of the team.
I love that.
Well,
so good.
there was something interesting that happened that night too, because after the event, I watched that anchor donor come to you, grab you by the hand, and just march around that room so proud, so excited, talking to donors, talking about future giving, talking about securing more giving. And I believe that night, that anchor donor was like, let's do it again. That there was a commitment that night already to say, let's do this again next year.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you couldn't bottle that magic up. It's all of the things.
No, you should, in fact, bottle that magic up.
But it's the strategic conversation. It's their investment and willingness. It's the excitement of the room. It's hitting a goal together. It's having everyone see that donor as a hero, but everyone feeling like they also got to be a hero.
Yeah.
It's a magic thing that you talked about, Chris, in collective effervescence when we were at Elevate last year. And I think that concept of collective effervescence is something that we see in those moments where when we come together, it exponentially can do more.
Yeah.
We also were talking to Paul Zak in a previous episode this season, and he's a neuroscientist that talks about what moves people toward engagement, what gets them to say yes, what creates joy and happiness in saying yes. And one of the things he talked about is the importance of the connection to each other, which you were just talking about. Yep. The value where you might think as a planner, it's just a holding pen. I was actually in the class I was teaching yesterday was asked the question, well, if I don't have all these games and activities and gimmicks that I'm doing during my cocktail hour, what are my donors doing during the cocktail hour? And I'm talking to each other and you.
Being humans together, people.
Sharing their stories and their why.
And I feel like I just attended an event that had a 2-hour cocktail reception beforehand. And I thought, what am I going to do for 2 hours? I think I'll go 90 minutes ahead because I'm not sure that I'll be able to fill 2 hours of time connecting to people. And when they were like, okay, let's head up to dinner, I thought, oh my God, I haven't had enough time. Because the connecting to each other is such an important element, especially right now.
Yep.
We're hearing from folks that's the win for them. And in that room that night, you witnessed it. People were primed and excited to be like, we did that, and this is our organization.
Yeah.
How do you move that momentum forward?
Yeah. How do you do it again?
I mean, I think I do feel, I'm thinking of our frontline fundraisers, and I'm thinking of that pressure of board and other staff members great, rinse and repeat.
Yeah. You made the $1 million. You fought for 9 months to get to the $1 million. Now let's do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that having that stakeholder conversation with those donors where they're involved in it does set you up to where
Yep.
you can get some of those anchor gifts and start building that. We're talking about the board. It's like, great, let's do the $1 million, and then turning it back on them and saying, how are you going to set us up for that? What are your commitments now? How are we going to scale that
Yep.
to show the community that you're involved and that they're joining you in this?
Yeah.
In that particular instance, we were also coming off of the capital campaign. So there was some new donors from that at a different scale. It had elevated some donors' scale of giving as well through that process for general operating because they had a deeper investment in the organization.
Yeah.
Which is another crucial reason to ask people for larger gifts, even if it's not that 7-figure, let's raise $1 million today. But as you ask people to have a deeper investment, they're more likely to come back at that level, and they're more likely to see the need in the organization.
Yep.
That's not this sunken cost fallacy, but actually is a true dedication and loyalty to achieving something. But I think that it is tricky, and I'm curious too about what your perspectives are on the events, especially as we're in this challenging time. I mean, I think that talking about a 2-hour cocktail reception might seem crazy long to some people, but is creating a space that isn't actually there in our day-to-day lives
Yeah.
to have that sense of community, especially around what can I do in all of the craziness that's happening right now, and saying, this is a thing that you can do.
Yeah.
This is a thing that we're all here to do together, that we can move this needle together and do far more than we could do separately. But yeah, there was, that cultivation of the relationships is crucial to be able to maintain that giving level, understanding why I'm giving, what might be changing in my ability to give next year, not feeling upset or making a donor feel bad if they say, I was doing this now, but now next year is actually when those kids are going off to college, and so I'm
Yep.
going to have to consider my giving over the next 4 years, or I'm entering this retirement phase and my income's going to be more limited, and graciously and gratefully accepting that. And that we just want you to be there. We appreciate that. Like, you are part of this. You've made that happen, and that's not going to change or
Right.
go away if you are no longer able to participate financially at a level that you might have once done.
Yeah.
Well, and I think giving ebbs and flows for people too. So keeping people close to you and keeping those relationships, we're definitely seeing fundraising events are growing in their capacity to support the organization. One, I think fundraising events often used to be a checkbox. And they used to be a game of comparisons. So we frequently would see an organization say, well, they did this, so we need to do this. But the board, the committee, the folks that were planning the event didn't know necessarily what the strategy was at play or how that got executed. So they would try to mirror things like logistics, right? They'd see like they had a theme, we need a theme. They serve steak, we need to serve steak.
Their bar was over there. So.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
right.
you start to see some mirroring, but the piece that we started to see now is people are actually really diving into what are the stories we're telling? How are we inviting donors in? We need these donors to show up in a big way. How do we get them invested? And I think that we're seeing that individuals are willing to spend more time gathering in all different forms. One of the first things that we saw when the announcement of federal funding went away was that almost immediately some organizations started doing like, we're going to have house parties. The board is going to be in person, not on Zoom. Staff meetings, we're going to have a staff retreat. It was like this immediate sense of like, gather all of our resources. And I even heard that in the national news too. I heard conversations of when you have a sense of not knowing what to do, that turning toward community, right? Like go back to community, go back to the things that brought you safety nets. And that's where we see organizations that when they hit that, scary moment of a giant federal grant going away, that they're able to turn toward where's our safety net and how do we like go to that net and stitch the things that are ripped and broken so that we can be stronger. And I think the gathering component is a huge part of that. Even if it's simply just invite people into like a volunteer night, you know, if your organization has any sort of element of performance, make sure the public is welcome to be a part of it. Any way that you can bring people closer, I think is important. Sorry.
Well, and no, I think too, what I would underscore that I hear sort of in between the lines there as well is that the form, like for that to happen, for you at that event, for that 2-hour
right.
to feel the way it did, form, function, and people have to be in alignment.
Right.
So when you're placing an arbitrary form on your crowd that doesn't want that, that doesn't want to participate in that, then there is no function to it, right? And so it's thinking about, I think, gathering at its core, what separates it from eventing is that you see who's in the room and you're building the room for them to be a part of.
Yeah.
You're not putting the room on them or inserting them into a room hoping that they'll do the things. It's an alchemy, right? And you're building, and it's all the 5 million things that go into that. But at its essence, you're not in comparison to organization X at this convention center or hotel serving this food. Like actually being in relationship with the people supporting your organization to know that, you know what, this is the kind of gathering that will resonate. Or are there a couple of kinds of gatherings you can do because you have a group that wants to do this and a group? So that's where knowing who's in your room and what they will lean into helps create that space where also the fundraising magic can happen for you as well.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. And the like knowing your donor, knowing your audience, that comes out of those relationships that we've been talking about.
Yep.
And the ability to say, okay, donor, you've just told me that you're not comfortable going to galas because it's a large group. Maybe there's some COVID things there. Maybe you're getting to an age where the noise is just affecting you differently. Maybe you just don't want to go out that late in the evening anymore and things have changed. I'm not going to force you to go to that event.
Right.
I would
That's
love
right.
for you to be there with us. I'll happily share photos and tell you all about it afterwards. But would you come over and do this other thing? I think that that's so important to recognize that it does not have to be a one size fits all. And if you're doing that, you're going to sacrifice some relationships because you're not seeing the individual needs, the way that people want to show up. Let them show up that way for your organization. Don't try to push them into a different inauthentic way of being because that's going to lead to an inauthentic relationship.
Well, I have a sort of wonder for you about how someone does what you just did with this event, with like, how do they convert their event into $1 million event by securing that wild, big anchor gift? And I want to preface this question by telling you that in our sort of lens, we see that from about Vancouver, Canada, all the way down the West Coast, all the way across the southern states, mostly along the coast in the bigger cities, and all the way up the East Coast to Ontario, we see that there is a culture of events that ask for money at the event, a paddle raise, a envelope on the table, a direct ask in the event. But within the central US and central Canada, we see that there is not a culture of asking for money at an event. Yet what we're talking about is you turned $1 million event because you had an anchor gift that you could leverage live in the ask. So I'm curious, if someone wanted to think about doing this for the first time, it feels scary to some people. Where would you coach them to start? One, in identifying an anchor gift, and two, would you advise that people make an ask in an event? I always think so, but I'm curious about what you think.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've actually been kind of having a conversation with some of my clients about this recently, about the goal of gathering. What is the goal of the event? Is it to gather community? Is it to invite new audience members into that community? Is it to raise the $1 million? Because you have to have one kind of guiding North Star in order to actually make those decisions around your event about what is going to happen, what the programming is going to look like, to facilitate that goal. So I would always encourage asking people for money at the event because if you're having a fundraising event, if the event is a fundraiser, if it's intended to meet a goal financially, then you should do that. There's lots of other opportunities to gather people to say thank you, to cultivate them through exposure to maybe some of your program officers or some impact stories. That doesn't have to be at the event and can be separate. And maybe that's where some donors would prefer to experience and then give through a separate conversation that's one-on-one. you should know your audience and who you're talking to for that.
Right.
If you're going to have a fundraiser and you're going to gather, this thing that we're talking about of the collective impact and getting people into a room where they're seeing they're not alone in wanting to support this and that they can be a part of something much larger in support of this goal, I think is a huge miss not to ask and invite them to be a part of that moment.
Yeah.
As for finding your anchor gift, I would say look at that top kind of leadership level giving that we were talking about earlier. See and know who is motivated by community, who is somebody that says, well, if I make this gift, who else is making this gift? You've asked me for this level of gift for the past 3 years. Maybe this is now, I'm asking you for this gift again, even though you've been maybe not sure about making this large of a gift, but here's what it's going to do, and here's the reason. So somebody that you know that strategy would resonate with, who wants to be part of a group of people that are leading a charge, and who wants to be able to see that gift activate a different type of community within your community, who aren't those people that see themselves as the $10,000, $25,000 donors, but maybe could give $1,000 or $5,000 and want to be proud of that. Or we were just thinking about this with Give Guide as well. For the Willamette Week, they have the 30 under 35, 35 and under category. And so being able to say, we want to deploy your gift as a match specifically to this demographic of people to help them be inspired, to help them feel like they've made a difference, to show them that joy of philanthropy that they might not have experienced in their upbringing, in their current lives, or really understand what not only that can facilitate for community, but also what it can facilitate for their sense of self.
I think that what you just brought up is essentially that this concept of either a match or an anchor gift is something that could be at any giving level and also could be in any form of campaign, not just in the event. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to jump in the fundraising elevator. We'll be right back.
Great.
Ready for your hard work to yield more funds at your next event? Join us at Elevate, a nonprofit fundraising event conference designed to bring our community together and make planning successful events easier. Register today for this hybrid conference on March 3rd and 4th, 2026 in Portland, Oregon, or join us online from anywhere. This isn't just another conference. You'll walk away with battle-tested strategies, hands-on tools, and proven templates that top fundraisers use to raise millions. Your mission deserves fully funded success. Register today at swaimstrategies.com.
Welcome back. We're here with Brandon Lenzi. We're talking about really all fundraising is a relationship. If you listen to nothing else,
All fundraising is a relationship.
Go forth with that. This is the part of the show where we ask all of our guests to join us in the fundraising elevator, where we're all headed up. What is one piece of parting wisdom tip you would offer our fearless fundraisers out there so that they can keep heading up?
Yeah. One tip. Well, right now I'm really focused on year end, and we've talked about a lot of different considerations for that throughout this episode of knowing your donors, knowing your audience, having their relationship, knowing how they want to be asked. And I think something that we've kind of talked a little bit about too is that people in this current ecosystem and environment are focusing on where they can have the impact, what matters most to them. And so I think a lot of people, rather than giving 10 gifts of $100, are looking at where I might give 2 gifts of $500 this year, because these are the organizations that are really important to me, that I want to see make it through, that I know that the work that they're doing is going to contribute to the solutions that we all need right now in this moment. And so as we're approaching year end, I think that people are going to be getting a lot of letters in the mail asking for a lot of support. And so think very carefully about what your messaging is, what your why of why you should donate, who you're asking, what kind of segments you're creating as part of that campaign that maybe aren't something you would have considered before, and to not be afraid to get creative with it and get specific and think maybe it's outside of the, oh, this is a certain level of donor, but maybe it's where they live. Maybe it's their hyper-local communities and what is going to resonate with them as far as the storytelling, because your ask is going to be landing in front of them at the same time as a bunch of other asks.
Yeah.
And hopefully they're going to give to all of those people. I don't want it to come off as like a competition, but if you are really reaching your donors and being thoughtful about who you're asking for, you'll still see that support at year end. And focusing on the community that's been there for you, that keeps showing up, is how you're going to have that success. And talking to them as a team member who you're working towards a solution with, I think is going to be crucial for your ask and your mission to stand out.
I know when we get a direct donation letter in the mail, if it starts off, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, it is in the trash faster than I can finish the sentence, because it is irrelevant to talk about our tax status. And so it's an interesting sort of habit that I think a lot of organizations embody. And what you're talking about is so much more dynamic than that. You're talking about incredible stories that connect directly to your donor, knowing your segmentation. And I suspect that this year we're going to see a lot of changes and learn a lot when it comes to year-end giving campaigns. And I think it's going to be both ways. We're going to see surprises, big and small. So I look forward to hearing from you and finding out how it went. If folks are listening today and they're new to fundraising, or they're an executive director that hasn't worked with a fundraiser like you are a fractional fundraiser that goes into organizations and directly supports their needs and their asks, how can people find you?
Yeah. You can go to my website. It's bowtiestrategies.co. There's no M on that. It's co like collaborative. So
Love it.
Want to make a note of that. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, Brandon Lenzi, and Bowtie Strategies is on there as well. So I'm happy to connect there. My website has a form that you can fill out to schedule a meeting with me, a discovery call, so we can talk about what your fundraising needs are, and some contact information as well.
Awesome. Well, we will put links so that everyone can get a hold of you. And thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for making bold asks and being willing to play with new ideas, because I think that the work that you do and the impact you have is tremendous for the organizations you work with.
Well, thank you. You both do the same thing. And so it's nice to be in community with you here, and everybody that's listening and watching this as well. And just know that we're achieving what we can't do separately when we're doing it together.
Beautifully said.
Love it.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced by Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by John Collier. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Friends, before we leave you, we want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please follow, subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, please share it with a friend and leave a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.